What's going on, Vapor fans? Tonight on the Straight Vault, we're going to be doing the most important video I have done in a long time. Very, very important. It's going to be a whopping full of knowledge of what's going on. And are you ready for it? It's going to be the battery revolution. Okay, it's going to change the way we think about batteries. It's going to change the way we purchase batteries. Now, I'm just going to go into it right now and give you a little glimpse of the work in progress that's going on. So we've come a long way since, we were dropping different kinds of videos as far as introducing the whole lithium battery guide. Okay, I'd say this is probably about 90%, if not 99%. We're almost done tweaking it, but this is the general gist of what's going on. A lot of the mumbo jumbo or whatever has been fixed. Actual true numbers that you can follow at the bottom over here. And let's start from the beginning, okay? From last time when on the Amp Hour, when Matt did a whole, introduction to the whole categorizing of batteries and stuff like that, there was a couple of things that we really needed to rework and on, because for the most part, many of you got it. Many of you just understood what it was off the bat, right? But we still have to get everybody else on board and get a lot of the stragglers who don't quite understand what exactly is going on, or the use of this, or why anything, right? For the most part, as far as this channel goes, right, constantly we have been asked, Peg, what is the best battery? What is the best battery? What is the best battery? And constantly we have refrained from that answer, just stepped away and shied away from that answer. It's not because we don't exactly have the answer for it. It's because we know that the answer that we want to give you is not the answer that you are looking for, okay? So this is going to be a belly full of knowledge tonight. So last time when we did other battery guides and things like that, okay, it was, the whole class A, B, C, D, and then we went from green to red, and then, it was a scale of the fluid inside and stuff, and then we changed all that. We changed all that because there was a couple of very, very helpful, interesting comments that was in the comment section saying how people were, well, some of the comments put it this way, right? People listing their ABCD battery, right? Somebody just said, well, a Type A battery is like a VTC5, and then a Type B is probably like a Purple E-Fest, and then a Type C is probably like a Trustfire or something like that, and then a Type D is probably like a no-name brand or something. So what happened was that, they started to list like the quality of the battery. Okay, so what is most important right now that everybody needs to understand regarding this guide, okay, is that Type A, Type B, Type C, Type D. We changed the word from class to type because people were confusing of one better than the other, and that's just simply not true, okay? All four batteries are important. If you own all four batteries, then basically you are ready for the world. If you own all four different types or all four different classes, whichever one you're able to, understand the knowledge with, right, without confusing the fact that, one is better than the other or one has more than the other, whatever. Different things for different purposes. All four of them are important. One is not better than the other. I cannot stress that more enough. One is not better than the other. This is why we intentionally went with teal, green, like a lime and then a yellow. The reason is because originally it was green and then yellow, orange, red, right? And then that kind of did a whole green is good, but then once it gets to red, it's kind of like a danger or something like that. No, that is not the way to look at it either, okay? It's not like safest to most dangerous. It's not this to that or anything, okay? It is an even trade-off, hand in hand, okay? If anything, you want to look at the different colors of the batteries over here, more like viscosity, okay, of how easy the energy is to dump out, and that is what the discharge rate is, okay? So as you can see over here, for the Type A battery, okay, it is the ultra high capacity, and then at the Type D battery, that it is the ultra high discharge, okay? Then on the Type B battery, you have a medium discharge, while the Type C battery, you have a medium capacity. So it's always been a trade-off hand in hand for the capacity versus the discharge. The higher your discharge, the lower your capacity is. The higher your capacity is, the lower the discharge is going to be. That's just the way, the nature of all the batteries are. Now, a lot of people who have questions about IMR, ICR, INR chemistries and stuff like that, those are just chemistry improvements as we go along, okay? But these days, everything is basically an INR battery, which is a hybrid battery of both the manganese and the cobalt to achieve all sorts of different numbers, okay? However, the general rule of thumb where you trade off the capacity versus the discharge still applies. So going on, it will also have like some recommended usage over here for regulated mods and mechanical mods. Generally for the Type A battery, I don't really recommend it for mechanical mods because in general, as a vapor, we're usually building stuff 0.8 or lower. It wasn't so much back then where we're building stuff, you know, 1 to 1.4 to 1.5 or something like that. Not so much anymore these days because of all the advanced devices that have come out and so many different other kinds of atomizers in dual coil options. Okay, so here's the mantra that I really need people to follow, okay? So we need to get the old way of thinking about batteries out of the way because it's wrong. There's so many videos out there in the past that we've done that says, make sure you use a high drain IMR battery. Make sure you, and then this was repeated over and over again and drilled into our brains. But this is simply not true. When you really think about it, even back then with a Provari, we were convinced that you needed high drain IMR batteries for a Provari, and then we all got like, you know, the red AW 16 amp battery, blah blah blah, whatever. When the truth is, all you really needed was the button top because it only accepted button top architecture. Okay, and it really had nothing to do with high drains or anything like that. This is what you really need to look for. Okay. The proper method to purchasing the right battery for any device is applying the closest amperage required of the application while retaining the greatest amount of milliamp hours in the battery. Now the last line over here says, although the Class D battery can fit into all devices safely, it is also the least efficient battery in terms of lifespan usage. Okay, so I need everybody to get on board and get with this, okay? Because look, the Type D battery, that's exactly what your Sony VTCs were, okay? VTC 30 amp high drain batteries, we shove them into everything. Sure, they work, they're absolutely safe, but we don't need to do that. Because high drain batteries kills a whole bunch of milliamp hours for no reason whatsoever. So now what I want to do is take you hand-in-hand shopping. Originally, I was going to make an multiple choice ABCD test and stuff like that, right? But I felt as if, like, first of all, there was not that many questions, and secondly, it's better if I just take you directly by the hand and show you what to do, how to do, what the right answer is, okay? So let's begin right over here. I have pulled up on the E-cig website a whole bunch of different kinds of data sheets regarding their different types of chips. This one is the SX350 over here. This is the 330 chip, and then this is the V4S, which is I think it might be one of the newer stuff. But anyways, not important. What is important is initially what was said over here. The proper method to purchasing the right battery for any device is applying the closest amperage required of the application. Okay, so in this case, what happens is that, like, we need to know exactly what the input current is going to be. So when we go back over here, it will show you specifically the input current, and it will say the maximum input current will be 30 amps. And then the typical input current somewhere around 10 amps. So meaning, right, that if the output power of 5 watts to 60 watts, if you're vaping this thing at the typical 20 to 30 watts or something like that, then using 10 amps is fine. But once you're going to crank this thing up to its maximum ability, then you will need the input current of 30 amps. And for an input current of 30 amps, immediately what comes to mind based on the chart over here would be the Type D battery, which is currently on the market, something like a Sony VTC3 rated at 30 amps. Okay, so moving on over here, right? So when we go to something like this, here's another special example that I like to share with you guys, okay? Now, in this term, in this particular example, we want to think in terms of a modder and not just a consumer, okay? Because it says specifically, right, that the input current over here is going to be 40 amps. And the input voltage is going to be 6.2 to 8.5. So this is going to require dual batteries, meaning that like each battery needs to be about 40 amps. So in order for this thing to really be powered correctly, we probably need to run the batteries in both series and parallel configuration all at the same time. So have you ever opened up like let's say a big remote control and it had two pairs of batteries, it just had 4 batteries in there? Well, that setup is most likely both series and parallel all at the same time. So what happens is that we could use 4 batteries of a type C, which is around the 20 amp rating, 16 to 25 amps. So around 20 amp battery, let's say like, you know, your LG HE2s or your Samsung 25Rs and stuff like that. 4 of those batteries wired together in both the series and parallel configuration would be perfect for this E-cig SX330 V3S 150 watt chip. Okay, so moving on over here, right? This one, the scaling of this was a little bit messed up, but same thing. This one, okay, is a new chip that's going to go from 7 watts to 100 watts. I believe it's going to be used in the IPv4 or something like that. But the best part of this thing is that the input current is 25 amps on this one. Now, the efficiency is much better on this chip. So something that will require 25 amps, then back then on the Type C, on the chart over here, we could use something around the Type C. We don't have to go into Type D. So using a Type C battery, right, where you know your 25 amp battery, you would get 2,000 plus milliamp hours, as opposed to going into your Type D battery using a VTC3 or something like that, right? Sure, you have the sufficient amount of amperage, definitely it's going to cover it, but you're going to end up with 1,600 milliamp hours. So you're just going to lose out anywhere between 400 to 900 milliamp hours for no reason, simply because somebody said, hey, you got to use high drain IMR, right? But which one and how much? This is what you have to know for yourself. This is how you do the homework so that you know how to buy certain things for different kinds of applications. So let's go back and talk about a couple of batteries that's not so hardcore, because the E-cig stuff is basically in more of like the C and D section. So Evolve has a DNA 25, DNA 40, DNA 30, DNA 20, things like that. So when we open up the data sheet for the DNA 30 over here, the input current says 12 amps. Now 12 amps, obviously this is very easily going to be for one of your Type B batteries, okay? And then when we come back again, the DNA 20 is only a requirement of 7 amps. So the Type A battery over here, which is usually around like 10 amps or lower, this is going to be the best battery for like a DNA 20 device, and you're going to be able to hold on to 3,200 milliamp hours. So again, you know, this is exactly what this initial rule is really all about. You want to match up as close as you can what the amperage requirement is, which is the input current, okay, while giving up the least amount of milliamp hours possible, okay, and then you have the proper fitting battery for your device. When we come back over here, right, certain things that I also want to mention, because I want to cover just a little bit of everything, okay? The DNA 25, the new chip, just for everyone to know, is 10 amps over here. Now, there's going to be devices like the SMY 180 God mod, okay? Certain people were interested in this device back then. I covered this device once upon a time. And the thing is that, like, when you go around and then you look up what's going on, they'll tell you what the input voltage is, they'll tell you what the maximum output is, but you still don't know exactly what the input is. You know, you need the input current to really be able to assess exactly what kind of batteries is best for a device like the God 180, and it's not mentioned on their site. So I would actually, in these cases, right, before you buy the device, probably submit an inquiry and then see exactly what they say. That way you have the proper batteries ready when you pick up this device, okay? Fortunately, for those of you who have this, I personally have one myself. What happens in this particular device is that, like, if you put in batteries that have insufficient amperage, then it will just step itself down. Okay, it will recognize that and step itself down and refuse to fire at all the way up to 180 watts, etc., because you don't have the batteries to support it. So lucky for that, but that doesn't mean every single device out there does that. Okay, so definitely something to keep in mind when it comes down to, you know, Peg, what if I can't find? Well, then you better ask the mother company, what is the input current? And if they can't tell you, I probably wouldn't buy this device because, you know, potentially it could be dangerous. All right, so now let's get into mechanicals, okay, because I promised that I would cover everything. So I have two Ohm's law calculators opened over here, okay, and what we're going to do is this, all right? Basically, you just have to know your Ohm's law. And as far as Ohm's law, everybody has a video. Every professional reviewer basically has a video on Ohm's law, so you can check out any one of those, including mine, if you don't really know your Ohm's law. But what I want to say, right, is that generally when you calculate stuff with Ohm's law, try to use 4.2 as your voltage. Okay, the reason is this. Granted that every single time you put an atomizer on your device, there's going to be a drop, and therefore nobody gets 4.2. Okay, and depending on how heavy the coil is, it could drop anywhere from 4.2 all the way down to 3.5. And it's very hard to say exactly what you're going to get unless you have an inline meter, and even then it's only as accurate as an inline meter can be. So therefore, purposely, you know, calculate what the high ball is so that you're always within safe parameters, and that's what exactly the 4.2 is. Okay, even though most likely when you fire stuff, it'll probably be at 3.8, but still intentionally calculate with the 4.2 for the sake of safety. So in this case over here, right, let's say I have 4.2 and I want to vape at a certain power, right? And let's say I normally vape at about 35 watts. So if I calculate this way, okay, it's going to go ahead and tell me, okay, then I need to build a resistance somewhere around half an ohm, and then an 8.3 current is going to be fine. So in this particular case, I'm actually good with a type A or type B battery as long as it's able to handle somewhere around that 8 current, all right? Then another way that I could calculate this thing, right, is exactly what my build is going to be. So if I refresh over here, I would go ahead and then put in 4.2, and then my resistance is like 0.4. Like, let's say I'd like to vape around 0.4. When I calculate, again, it's going to say 10.5 as my current. Again, 10.5 as my current, definitely a B-type battery, not so much a type A battery anymore, because I'm going to require a little bit more current here. So, excuse me, bringing this back again, okay, another way of calculating these things would be to, let's say we have a battery and it's already telling us exactly what the continuous current is, right? Let's say it's about, like, you know, your average 20 or something like that, right? So again, 4.2 as the voltage over here, and then the current being able to handle up to 20 amps, right? We calculate, and then it lets us know that we could build a resistance all the way as low as somewhere around 0.2. Try not to get too close to it, right? You want to do something like 0.2, back it off a little bit. The 4.2 is your buffer, and it will allow you to vape at around, like, you know, 84 watts or something, 80 watts comfortably. So what happens is that, like, you know, when you vape, right, and there's a drop on it, then what happens is that, let's say it drops down to what nominal voltage is, right? So nominal voltage is like 3.7, and then the current is 20 over here. I'm sorry, the resistance is 0.21, right? So 3.7 and then 0.21. Normally at 4.2 it would have required 20 amps of current, right? But now when we calculate, it only requires 17. So therefore, if you happen to have a type C battery that's holding out at exactly 20 amps continuous, as the voltage drops down, the current will drop down as well. So you're always going to be within safe parameters, okay? So some of you might have some questions regarding, hey Peg, tell me more about pulse ratings, etc., etc. I'm just going to keep that one very, very general, which is you should not be operating and doing stuff within pulse parameters. The reason is basically the understanding of internal resistance, okay? Let's talk a little bit about internal resistance real quick. It's not the purpose of this lesson, but we should speak a little bit about internal resistance. Internal resistance is basically the odometer on a battery, kind of like, you know, whatever is in the car. When the car is brand new, it might have anywhere between 1 mile to 5 miles on it because, you know, the dealer was just moving it around the dealership, etc., right? It might have 50 miles on it because it was transferred from one dealership to another, something like that. So you have an idea of how new this battery is. So in general, right, your LiPo batteries, those LiPo packs, those usually start at around like 0.5 to 1.5. And while 18650 lithium-ion batteries usually start at around like 6, 7, or 8, something like that, all right? If you happen to get a battery and you test for its internal resistance, and let's say something, it's around like, you know, 25 or 30 or something like that, then it's very possible that you probably have like a showroom battery. As far as testing for internal resistance, okay, if you have an internal resistance testing meter, it's good to have now and then. It's expensive, but it's good to have. Not everybody needs it, okay? But definitely it will tell you when the life of the battery is basically up, okay? Once it's, you know, breaking into the 800s, the thousands or whatever, it's most likely time to chuck this battery because it's been through so many charges. So what makes the internal resistance go up is usage and heat in the battery itself. That's just, you know, basics, simple understanding of what's going on with every single one of these batteries, okay? So when we talk about internal resistance, when it goes up, like the odometer in a car or whatever, when it goes up, right, the performance begins to go down. So it can no longer handle the same amount of milliamp hours. It no longer holds the same kind of charge, and it no longer discharges at the same rate that you thought it did. Okay, so that's why it's so dangerous to operate within pulse specs. Does that make sense? Sure, there were a couple of people who used to talk about like how a Samsung 25R could pulse at 80 amps or something like that, okay? This is just speculation. This is just talk, okay? Some people are going to swear by it. Some people are going to say that that's crazy. But what my point is, from a scientific approach, is that, okay, let's just say that it does, right? But when you pulse, when you do that kind of heat or whatever, it hurts the battery. And for every single vape session that you go through, how much more internal resistance have you added? Meaning, like, how many more miles did you put on this car every single time we go out on a field trip, every single time we have a vape session, so that like when you come back, does that car still handle what you think it handles? You got to remember, cars go through maintenance and oil changes and stuff. Batteries don't. Batteries just go through a recharge and that's that. But there is wear and tear in every single one of these batteries. So be aware of what's going on. This is why it's so important to maintain stuff and handle stuff and always be within those continuous parameters. This is why we stress that, okay? So moving on again. Here's some stuff that I want to talk about real quick, okay? As far as, hey Peg, what are the ABCDs? Like, what do you think the ABCDs are, et cetera, et cetera? Okay, these are not my personal picks, but these are what I believe is the common picks of what's currently out on the market right now. Okay, so let's hit that up real quick. And my pick for well, I wouldn't exactly say my pick, but my understanding of what a Type A battery is at the moment is probably an NCR 18650B. This thing is operating at 6.8 amps and 3,400 mAh battery, and that totally fits the profile of a Type A over here. So moving on, probably a 18650 PF. A PF does 2,900 mAh, again fitting the Type B category over here, and it does 10 amps continuous. Again, fits both profiles. Okay. Battery Type C, your Samsung 25R. Okay, Samsung 25R, 2,500 mAh discharge and handles at 20 amps. So 2,500 mAh, 20 amps. And then finally, you know, your Sony VTC3, right, 1,600 mAh, and then rated for 30 amps. So that's going to be basically kind of sort of the Type D battery. Okay, going through the comments over here, a lot of people very interested in the batteries and getting them. Guys, absolutely, I need to know, right? Do you want the best batteries out there? Because I can get my hands on them for you. Okay, some of you guys who are very smart, busy bees, I'm super proud of you guys, have mentioned certain models, kind of like the Samsung 30Q over here, sounds perfect, but they're not available, which is also absolutely true. So the question is, do you want me to make them available to you? Okay, if you want to do that, then I will go ahead and do that, and then I will reveal to you exactly what my picks of class or type A, B, C, and D are. They're absolute kick-ass batteries. The batteries that I currently mentioned right now are just batteries that are currently out on the market at the moment. Okay, if you want the new 2015 batteries, that's not available to the market right now. The problem is this, right? The reason why these batteries are available the way they are available right now is just the way the market is at the moment. Okay, it's whatever companies who are the leaders of, you know, pushing batteries towards the vaping community, that's what's going on. When you really check out like different kinds of reviews and stuff like that, nobody really talks about anything other than like the Samsung 25Rs, the Imrins, the blah, 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 this and that. And when you really think about it, they're all the companies who are also in the vaping game all at the same time, right? It's very rare that, like, you know, like the Panasonics and stuff like that, like the Orbtronics, like the other batteries that were in the game for a long time for, you know, different kinds of flashlights and power drills, etc., 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 right? That are noticed for vaping. And that's really what we should be doing. We should be checking out like all sorts of other kinds of markets that also carry 18650 batteries, and then looking at like, okay, well, what are the specs of those things? And then bringing them back and putting them into our vaping devices, and then you have the best batteries. Okay, so it's all about really, really doing your homework, and then having the connection to be able to get those. So let me know, guys, in the description, in the comments down below, right? I absolutely need to know how interested you guys are as far as getting the Type A, B, and C premium batteries. Okay, I will show you if you guys are totally down for it, then what happens is that I will go ahead and get samples of them, because right now the problem is that like they're not readily available to the public at the moment. Okay, so there's no point of me revealing exactly which model numbers they are. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get samples of all of them first and test it and run the graphs, show you guys the graphs, and if you're interested, then we will do a big group buy for everyone so that everybody could get the most badass batteries on the market. And when I say badass batteries, I promise you, the most badass batteries on the market. Okay. For the Type A battery, I have something in mind right now that's going to be bundled along with the PVA 40 retail version, and that's going to give it like a sick amount of milliamp hours, just absolutely sick, because that was the whole purpose of the project, to build a DNA 40 with a sick amount of milliamp hours, a sick amount of usage time. I estimate something about like it'll last you Monday through Friday, no problem, and then you could charge it over the weekend or something. As far as the Type B battery, I guess you guys already have a pretty nice clue that it's going to be the Samsung 30Q. The Samsung 30Q is actually a 3,000 milliamp battery with a 15 amp discharge. Now, what's going to be awesome about that, this is just a little spoiler, a little teaser, okay, is that when you really think about it, right, 3,000 milliamp hours at 15 amps, that's going to fit every single DNA device possible, including the DNA 40 for those of you who have a single battery, because even though the DNA 40 is required at 16 amps, 15 amps is good enough, you know. I mean, you're really going to run it at like the straight 40, or you're really doing the temperature control thing, you know what I mean? So that's going to give you 3,000 milliamps inside of a one battery device. So if they make, like, you know, if any company comes out with, like, let's say like a DNA 40 mini that takes, you know, a single 18650 device, then a Samsung 30Q is going to be the sweet spot battery for it, you know. As far as the Type C and the Type D batteries are concerned, I believe that I have found a Type C and a Type D battery that are both not only kick-ass in its specs, but also kick-ass in its ability to handle heat, so that you know, after a hardcore vaping session or whatever, the internal resistance would not go up as easily as if it was, say, an old school Sony VTC3, because VTC3s are just, you know, older technology, you know. That's just all it is. So yeah, I do have a whole bunch of 2015 models in mind that, like, I plan to share with you guys, but I need to get my hands on the samples first, and then test them, and then run the graphs, so that, like, you know, you guys get the real legit stuff, and you know the whole idea of what's going on, and you know, proven with numbers, as well as I'm able to promise you guys the top bins for every single one of this stuff because of my sources. So yeah, guys, that's really it for this one. I've taken you guys by the hand of exactly how to differentiate between Type A, B, C, and D. I hope you guys have, you know, got it in your minds now, right? That there is no such thing as the one magical battery. There is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all battery, okay? Back then, you know, a lot of people hooting and hollering about, like, you got to use VTC5s or VTC4s. You got to use Samsung 25Rs. Okay, let's just say we were using Samsung 25Rs, right? The Samsung 25R does 20 amps continuous, and then it boasts, like, oh, you know, it could pulse this or it could pulse that, or something like that. But I just explained to you guys exactly why pulse is dangerous, especially once the internal resistance, once you run up a lot of mileage on the battery, then you can't count on pulsing at all. You see what I'm saying? So when you put it into heavier devices, or, you know, your parallel box bonds and stuff like that, and then you build ultra low on them, it's not a good idea. Okay. And then as far as using them in other devices, like, well, you know, I put it in my DNA devices, etc., etc. Well, I just showed you guys earlier, right, that there were like Type B and Type A batteries that, you know, you could put into your DNA 20 devices, because the DNA 20 device over here, where was it real quick? So if we went over to DNA 20, and then we just looked up the spec sheet real quick, right? it only requires 7 amps to run a DNA 20, you know? So you could just use like a really big Panasonic and then and enjoy 3,400 milliamps on that thing. There's no reason to shove in, you know, LG HE2s, HE4s, and Samsung 25Rs into like these lighter devices. Same thing last time when we did the Cloudport Mini giveaway, and I wanted everybody to just really, really dig hard of how to shop the perfect battery for this device, and the answer, you know, at the time really was the Samsung. The Panasonic NCR 18650B. So, yeah, definitely going to have new stuff coming out, right? Stay tuned with the channel, and I will show you the graphs on all that other stuff that I will be revealing very soon, and hopefully, you know, you guys want in on it, okay? So, until next time, as always, question everything, do your homework, and vape clever, guys. Take care.